Hey everybody, welcome to another DMVCBN Comic Book Club. I'm your host Freddie, coming to you from Washington, D.C. Today is Saturday, August 31st, 2024, and we're here to discuss comics, both new and old, print and digital. We are live on Zoom every Saturday at 11 a.m., and I want to personally invite everyone listening to come join me on a future Comic Book Club meeting. DMVCBN is not just a conventional podcast, it's a club. It's a place for you to meet new people and to talk about what comic book media you are interested in. All are welcome. All right, let's get to the books. First, let's talk about Marvel Comics. This week, Marvel published their 85th anniversary special. Here's a gatefold variant cover by Luciano Vecchio. Take a look at that spread. If you have any favorite characters, let me know in the comments. I was really excited to see a lot of my favorites and a lot of diversity here on this cover. This book has a framing story featuring Wolverine and Deadpool, and it's written by Ryan North and drawn by Joshua Cassara. And then there are several vignettes, and one of them is a Ms. Marvel storyline written by Ms. Marvel actress Iman Vellani and Sabir Pirzada, and it's drawn by Stephen Byrne. And in this story, Kamala Khan is actually a herald of Galactus. It's pretty interesting. We also have a classic Excalibur tale, written and drawn by the legendary Alan Davis. There's a fun winter tale featuring Spider-Man and his Spidey-mobile. This is set in the past, and it's written by the great Christopher Priest and drawn by Carlo Pagulayan. There's an interesting tale called The Moon Warrior. This seems to feature a Moon Knight who's set in feudal Japan. I didn't quite understand everything that happened in this part, but it was still interesting. It was written and drawn by Yuji Kaku. There was another story called Contest of Champions by Steve Skroce, and this one has a lot of our favorite heroes and villains battling it out in a gladiator arena. And then the story ends with some more Deadpool and Wolverine from the future and that framing story arc. So there's an all-star lineup of talent on this book. I also want to show you the main cover by Kyer Andrews, featuring all the main players of this issue. You've got Deadpool and Wolverine, you've got Spider-Man, you've got Ms. Marvel, you've got Nightcrawler and Captain Britain. Next I want to talk about Aliens vs. Avengers. It was written by Jonathan Hickman and drawn by Esad Ribic, the same team that brought us their take on Secret Wars back in 2015. Now, I'll admit, I've never seen an Aliens movie, but this seems just in time for the Alien Romulus movie that's out in theaters right now. This story is set in the future, where the aliens have ravaged Earth, and the few remaining Avengers team up to try and save what's left. And here's the variant cover by Tony S. Daniel. Let's talk about The Amazing Spider-Man by Zeb Wells and Ed McGuinness and more. This is a milestone issue, issue 50 of the current run. And it's been out for a few months, but it's just now been added to Marvel Unlimited. So if you haven't read it, I recommend you go read it. I know not everybody's a fan of Zeb Wells' current run, but you know, this issue does kind of tie up some long-running plots with Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin, and these are plot lines that have been going since Nick Spencer's run. I think that it's still kind of interesting, and the art is pretty good too, so it's worth a read. There are also a lot of fun backup stories that you might want to check out. Here's a cool variant cover by Greg Capullo. Classic Spidey versus Green Goblin by John Romita Jr. Even a classic Spidey pose by the legendary John Romita Sr. May he rest in peace. And if you've been following the Amazing Spider-Man title, this week we got the milestone 950th issue. Okay, we've got John Romita Jr. back on art. If you have enjoyed the story between Spider-Man and Tombstone, you might like this. We're finally coming to the conclusion of everything going on with them and Randy Robertson and Janice Lincoln, and it's pretty interesting stuff. This is an oversized issue, and again, we have a few backups stories celebrate all 950 legacy issues of Amazing Spider-Man. They even have a cover gallery that shows you all the covers that led up to this. We also have a Disco Dazzler variant cover featuring Mary Jane, drawn beautifully by Joel Jones. Another Spidey Mary Jane variant cover. This one's by Pablo Villalobos. But that's not all for the Spidey books that came out this week. The Clone Saga continues with Chasm, Curse of Cain, #1, by Steve Fox and Andrea Baccardo. This cover is by Lionel Francis Yu, and I'm not the biggest fan of Spider-Man's clones, but I do think that their costumes look kind of cool. Here's a cool variant cover by Martin Coccolo. And here's a cool one by Salvador Larroca, featuring the classic Scarlet Spider outfit. Now it's time to talk about the new X books that came out this week. Let's start with X-Men #3 by Jed MacKay and Ryan Stegman. As depicted in the cover, we have Cyclops facing off with Agent Lundqvist, and they're meeting at a diner in Alaska and expressing their frustrations with each other. Meanwhile, the agent's soldiers are attacking the X-Men's base, and they are trying to steal Cerebro, and the X-Men are successfully able to fight them off even while Cyclops is at the diner. And yeah, you have some pretty cool moments, but there's a moment towards the end where Cyclops excuses himself to the bathroom, and he has a moment of serious anxiety. I'm not sure if this issue was meant to come out before Uncanny X-Men #2, but it did, and there is a little moment that ties into that, so it's kind of a tease for that issue, and we'll see in the weeks to come. I love this variant by Mahmoud Asrar featuring the team. And another beautiful one by Joel Jones. Next, we've got NYX #2 featuring Laura Kinney. Still written by Kelly and Lansing and drawn by Francesco Mortarino. This is a great insight into where Laura Kinney Wolverine is at right now. She's investigating some lost mutant kids, and there's a surprise villain at the end of this book, so you might want to read that to find out who it is. She meets a new mutant called Local, and he seems kind of interesting. And we do get a few scenes with the rest of the cast. Next issue, it looks like we'll be focusing on Anole, so that should be interesting. Here's a cool variant cover by Maria Wolf. And here's a cool one by Derek Chu. And last but not least, for the X books, we've got X-Force #2 by Jeffrey Thorne and Marcus Toe. And as the cover hints, they might be facing Black Panther this issue, or are they? It might be a bit of a misdirect. Don't go in expecting T'Challa. There's a bit of a twist on it, but it's interesting, and it does give the X-Force a run for their money. Here's another variant cover that features Black Panther. It's by Todd Harris. You get to see the whole team. Here's a cool Clayton Crane variant featuring Rachel Summers as Scotty. And here's a really lovely Phil Noto Disco Dazzler variant featuring Forge and Mystique for some reason. Mystique is not in the book, so don't get your hopes up for that. Here's a team variant by Alan Qua, where they're in the Wakandan jungles. And I've got to say, this book really reminds me not of previous X-Force titles, but actually of Extreme X-Men from the 2000s. For fans who remember this book, you know, they had the red and black costumes, they had international missions, and you had a lot of the same team members. You have Betsy, you've got Rachel, and you've got Sage plays a big role. In Extreme X-Men, Storm was using Destiny's Diaries to try and avoid future disasters. In X-Force, we have Forge using his analog device to try and prevent future disasters. If you like this new X-Force book and you're looking for something similar to read while we wait for new issues, you might want to go back and read Extreme X-Men by Chris Claremont and Salvador Larroca. As fans of the channel know, I saw Deadpool Wolverine last month, and it's still not out on digital or streaming, so I want to say a little spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen it. If you don't want to know the spoiler alert, skip ahead maybe 5 or 10 minutes. But for those who saw the movie, you might remember that we got to see Jennifer Garner's Elektra. And so that inspired me to go back and actually watch that movie. I had never seen it because we all know it got terrible reviews. I think it's at like 11% on Rotten Tomatoes with the critic score. But, you know, I didn't think it was that bad. I know I'm not saying it was great, but I'm not saying it was terrible. In fact, I think it kind of reminds me of the Netflix vibe of Marvel shows where you have, you know, lots of color, but it's also kind of dark, but also not a whole lot of humor. It's just mostly, you know, action, and Elektra, she's trying to basically find herself, and she ends up fighting the Hand, and it's interesting for fans of Elektra. Speaking of Elektra, I want to talk about Daredevil, The Woman Without Fear, issue number 2. This came out a few weeks ago, where she fights the Punisher, the new version of the Punisher. So I'm following that title, and if you're interested in Elektra and Daredevil, you might want to catch up with that as well. When I was at my comic book store, I also got this cool Marvel must-haves collection of 3 recent issues. This collects the Spectacular Spidermen number 2, G.O.D.S number 2, and Avengers Twilight number 1. I already had Avengers Twilight number 1, but I didn't have the other 2 books. So I'm excited that they are putting these out and they're giving them away for free, because this helps people get interested in titles that they might not be reading. I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to go read it later for sure. If you're enjoying this video, please like and subscribe. DMVCBN is only 8 subs away from 50, so please, please, please help this channel grow. I really appreciate your support. Now let's talk about some DC comic books. When I was at the store, I saw this amazing foil facsimile cover of Superman versus Muhammad Ali. See how shiny it is. It took me a while to decide if I was going to get the foil or the regular cover, but I ended up going with the foil for $17. And I think it's worth it, guys. Like, it's oversized, it's beautiful, it's by Neil Adams, and like, look at this gatefold cover. Everybody who's everybody is at this match. You've got everyone from Perry White and Wonder Woman to the Jackson 5 and Cher, and even Gerald Ford. Like, it's crazy. Like, there's even a page here where you can see exactly who's in this audience. Lots and lots of famous names of the time when this came out in 1978, and it's just so cool. Like, not only that, the story by Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams is great. Like, the artwork is beautiful. I highly recommend you pick this up if you can, or find a copy. Like, it's really cool. Another DC book I want to talk about is Nightwing. So I recently caught up to The Battle for Blüdhaven's Heart by Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo. This collection includes issues 92, issues 93, issue 94, issue 95, and issue 96. You've got kind of a Brady Bunch kind of cover there. I do remember when this cover first came out, it caused a bit of a stir online, because you've got the Bat family here, but the only one missing is Signal, Duke Thomas, and then you have Cassandra Cain pushed to the back there. So There was some frustration among fans by pushing characters of color to the back or not including them at all. But I will say that Duke at least does get some time in the book. You can see him here in this cool group shot with Nightwing's friends and family. Another reason we love Nightwing is because he's an ally. You can see, here's the Pride variant for issue 93. So if you're not reading Nightwing, now's the time to catch up. This is an Eisner Award-winning book, and it's coming to its conclusion very soon. So I'm trying to read as much as I can so I can be there when it all ends. All right, now it's time to talk about this book from Archie Comics, Archie, The Decision, by Tom King and Dan Parent. Now, we all know that Dan Parent is a legendary Archie Comics artist. He's been doing great work for them for years. But this is Tom King's first Archie Comics book, and fans know Tom King. He's got a lot of great DC work, and I think he's got some independent stuff as well. So this issue gives you classic Archie in the vein of the Love Showdown or any number of stories where Archie's trying to decide between Betty or Veronica. If you like the Archieverse, this gives you the whole cast, even one of my favorites, Sabrina. And you've also got Josie and the Pussycats and just everybody. Like, I think it's a good time. Does Archie make a decision? Don't get your hopes up, but hopefully you'll have some fun reading about it. I know I did. Here's another Dan Parent variant. This one features Betty and Veronica leaving Archie heartbroken. And here's another Dan Parent variant. This one has Betty and Veronica as the angel and devil on Archie's shoulders. And this one's done in a more classic style. Here's a cool one by Nuno Pereira. It's an homage to the classic Amazing Spider-Man issue number 121, the Turning Point issue, which led to the death of Gwen Stacy. It's so silly to see Archie in the Spider-Man pose, but I love it. And here's a cool cover by Stephen Byrne, who we saw earlier on the Marvel 85th anniversary issue. I like this cover. He's got a different style than the classic Archie art style, and I think it works. I'd like to see more of it. And the last thing I want to talk about today is the movie Unbreakable, written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan, starring Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson. This is a movie from the year 2000. It came out just a few months after the first X-Men movie, and it has a similar vibe. Like, it's pretty serious, made for adults. They weren't even allowed to advertise it as a comic book movie back when it came out. But since I discovered that as an adult, I was like, I gotta watch this movie. I gotta see what it's about. And it was pretty good. It's different. Like, I do want to say, there's always been a lot of talk about whether or not we should have a black actor cast as Professor X. And I gotta say, if you're looking for a black Professor X, just watch this movie. Samuel L. Jackson's character, Mr. Glass, is kind of like Professor X. He's in a wheelchair. He goes around looking for superpowered people, and he's not the nicest guy. Whereas Bruce Willis, he's discovering his powers. Now he's kind of like, a white version of Luke Cage, like, because he's got this unbreakable body. He's really strong, but he doesn't seem to be immortal. He does have a weakness. That weakness is very comic booky, and it's kind of got some interesting scenes. So if you like a superhero story with kind of a Twilight Zone-y bent, that's kind of like it's not full of a lot of action, but it does have some tense moments, some drama, and just a lot of intrigue. So I definitely recommend it if you haven't seen it. I'm going to try and watch the 2 sequels when I can. One funny thing about this movie, when I was watching it, I clocked that the actress who played Samuel L. Jackson's mother, Charlene Woodard, is actually the same actress who played his wife in Secret Invasion. And I just think that's really funny that they've known each other that long and they've played these different roles. So that's acting for you. But yeah, check this movie out, and maybe we can talk about the sequel on a future comic book stuff. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, if you did, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate all the support and all the growth that this channel has seen so far. Like I said, 8 more subscribers to 50. That'll be a big milestone for me. So I hope you guys can help me cross that number. And until then, you can find me on Threads at DMVCBN. And I hope you guys can join me next Saturday at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, have a great day and Excelsior! Bye.